Hello, everyone. First of all, welcome. Thank you so much for giving up your time and coming in and sharing it with us. We have a wonderful presentation for you. Welcome to, you've probably been here for a while, but welcome to WhaleFest Monterey 2018. My name is Steve Elzy, and I'm with KION CBS Television and an organization called Your Sanctuary TV. First thing I'd like to do is let you know something. These proceedings have all been or are being taped as I speak right now. And the taping's being done by Access Monterey Peninsula, which is our local community television station. So can we just give those guys a hand? They're working it. They're working it all day. All day. So thank you to AMP. Thanks also to some of our sponsors, which include the Fisherman's Wharf Association, the National, Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, Coca-Cola, and many more people go into making this whole thing happen. So we thank each and every one of them. Our next speaker is Ann Warner. I was trying to think of a word that would describe her, one word, and I think dedicated is a good word. And now you'll understand why. She once spent 6 months on Midway Atoll, which is the most isolated coral reef in the world. So, and she was doing research over there. She's done a lot of different types of research, and especially on coral reefs, a lot about the impacts, managing the impacts of climate change. And today, again, plastics in the ocean. My goodness. It's a terrible problem. We've got some solutions, and Ann Warner's going to bring them all to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for hanging in here until the last presentation of the day. As Steve said during his kind introduction, my name is Ann Warner, and I'm the program manager of Think Beyond Plastic's Mesoamerican Reef Project. We are a local organization based here in Carmel, but as you'll find out, we have a truly global reach. I'll be talking today about the marine plastic pollution problem and Think Beyond Plastic's unique approach of harnessing the forces of innovation and entrepreneurship to leverage the social enterprise. I'll draw upon specific examples from our Mesoamerican Reef Project and then tie concepts back to our local community here in Monterey Bay. So, to set the stage and give you a sense of the scale of the plastic pollution problem, I have a couple questions for you all. How many plastic bags do you think are used per minute worldwide? 1,000? Any other guesses? 1 million? 30,000? A billion? Okay. What? Uh-oh. What did it? Okay, so 1 million. 1 million plastic bags are used per minute worldwide, and yet the average working life of a plastic bag is 15 minutes. Over 500 billion plastic bags are used worldwide each year. And it's interesting to note that the same number applies to the number of beverages packaged in plastic bottles sold worldwide, 1 million per minute and 500 billion per year. So, how much plastic by weight do you think is produced each year? 100,000. Think orders of magnitude larger. 1 billion? 2 billion. Okay, we're in the billions. This is good. Well, not really, but, and how much of that do you think ends up in the ocean? 8 million tons. So, 300 million tons of plastic is produced each year. Half of that is for single-use products, which are products like beverage bottles, straws, and bags that are used once and discarded. Yet it takes at least 400 years for plastic to degrade. 2.5% of the 300 million tons produced each year, or 8 million tons, ends up in the ocean. This is equivalent to 5 grocery bags filled with plastic trash for every foot of coastline around the world, or the contents of 1 dump truck per minute being dumped into the ocean. So now that I've hopefully horrified you, I'll move on to the substance of the presentation. We'll start out by looking some more at the scale and effects of the plastic pollution problem and why current approaches aren't working. Then I'll give you some more information on Think Beyond Plastic as an organization, who we are, what we do, and our main program areas. We'll look in depth at the Mesoamerican Reef Project, why we selected this region for the project's overall vision and strategies, significant findings to date, and future directions. I'll conclude by bringing us back to our local community here in Monterey Bay and showing you how we Californians are not immune to the growing problem and effects of plastic pollution. So let's begin by looking at the scale of the problem, and logically, global plastic pollution is directly related to global plastics production. Plastics have brought incredible economic benefit to modern society due to their combination of low cost, versatility, durability, and high strength to weight ratio. The success of plastics is reflected in the exponential growth in their production over the past half century. Since 1964, plastics production has increased 20-fold, reaching 311 million tons in 2014. Production is expected to double again in the next 20 years and almost quadruple by 2050. The plastics industry as a whole is reliant upon finite supplies of oil and gas, which make up more than 90% of its feedstock. Currently, 4 to 8% of the world's oil production is used to make plastics. If the current strong growth of plastics usage continues as expected, oil consumption by the plastics industry will account for 20% of total consumption by 2050. The exponential growth of plastic production has overwhelmed existing recycling infrastructures and resulted in massive plastic waste accumulations on land, in the ocean, and in the atmosphere. As we learned a few minutes ago, over 8 million tons of plastic are dumped in the oceans each year. Some of this plastic, such as the beverage bottle shown floating here, is clearly an eyesore, but the scary news is that the majority of the plastic debris we cannot even see with our naked eye. The majority is micro, or less than 5 millimeters in size, like those particles pictured in the upper left corner here. Plastics can either be manufactured intentionally to be micro-sized, or microplastics can result from fragmentation of larger plastic products. It is important to note that this fragmentation is not the same as degradation. The polymer simply breaks down into smaller pieces, but it's still the same polymer and will not break down farther on human timescales. It should also be noted that less than half of manufactured plastic is buoyant, which means that a lot of the plastic marine debris sinks. So in addition to microplastics, this is another way in which the problem can be out of sight, out of mind. Birds, fish, and mammals can mistake plastic for food, as it sounds like you've been hearing all day. More than 245 different species have been found to have ingested marine plastics, including sea turtles, gray whales, albatrosses, and harbor seals. Species that selectively feed on discrete food items, as well as those that indiscriminately filter feed, such as whales, are at risk. Entanglement is another problem faced by marine life. Over 275 species of animals, including nearly half of all marine mammal species, have suffered from documented entanglements. The ability of invasive species to use floating plastic debris as transport devices is another environmental concern. Species of oysters, barnacles, land plants, sea anemones, and mussels have all successfully invaded new ecosystems using plastic debris as a vector for transportation. Plastic pollution also presents dangers to human health. Plastic particles floating in the ocean serve as concentrating and transport devices for environmental pollutants, which raises toxicological concerns for marine organisms that commonly ingest microplastics. These plastics move from one level to another in the food chain, eventually ending up on our unsuspecting plates. In addition to chemicals that absorb onto plastic particles, plastics also contain pollutants added at the time of manufacture that leach out into the environment. Two of the most common and well-known plastic additives, BPA and phthalates, are linked to hormone interference and endocrine disruption, which can lead to cancers, birth defects, immune system suppression, and developmental problems in children. 93% of Americans age 6 and older test positive for BPA, one of the better-known endocrine disruptors. Mosquito-borne diseases such as Zika virus and malaria also become more prevalent due to discarded plastic containers that collect standing water and form breeding grounds for mosquitoes. The full impact of marine plastic on economics is unknown, but we do know that it is substantial. The impact on maritime natural capital is significant, and initial studies suggest that it is at least in the billions of dollars. One estimate by the UN Environmental Program puts the annual damage of plastics to marine ecosystems at $13 billion per year. In addition to the direct economic costs, there are the adverse impacts on human livelihoods and health, food chains, and other essential economic and societal systems to which it is even harder to assign monetary values. Methods or models for putting a price tag on marine litter effects are presently rough at best. In the next two slides, I'm going to compare the current model of plastics production, usage, and afterlife, which is shown here, with a new model called the circular economy, which will be in the next slide. So as in the business as usual model illustrated here, of the 78 million tons of plastics produced annually, 98% of that is from virgin feedstock. Only 2% consists of feedstock made available through closed-loop recycling, or recycling of plastics into the same or similar quality application. Only 14% of all the plastics produced are collected for recycling, and 4% of that is lost via processing, and another 8% is recycled into other lower value applications, which is referred to as cascaded recycling in this figure. A whopping 40% of the plastics produced annually is landfilled, and another 32% is lost as leakage into natural environments, primarily the ocean. As you can see, the input of new resources is huge, while the amount that is recycled back in a closed loop is very, very small. Clearly, things need to change. So the overarching vision of the circular economy approach is that plastics never become waste. Rather, they re-enter the economy as valuable technical or biological feedstock. The ultimate goals are to deliver better system-wide economic and environmental outcomes by creating an effective after-use plastics economy, by improving the economics and uptake of recycling, reuse, and controlled biodegradation. Significantly reducing leakage of plastics into natural systems, whether it be the oceans or freshwater, and other negative externalities. So in this figure, the leakage arrow is much, much smaller than it was in the previous figure. And third, decoupling plastics from fossil fuel feedstocks by both reducing cycle losses and exploring and adopting renewably sourced feedstock, which at this point would be either greenhouse gas-based or bio-based. Challenging combinations of characteristics and properties are required for new innovations to succeed in the marketplace. These include being both biobenign and from renewable sources without being food grade, being moisture resistant and biodegradable, being gas impermeable with a long shelf life and being free of synthetic chemicals, having strong economic properties and high performance specifications, and being commercially scalable. The world's leading businesses, academics, and innovators need to come together to creatively define these moonshot innovations that have these challenging combinations of versatile properties and can be produced economically and at scale. So here enters Think Beyond Plastic. We are working to advance this new approach that depends upon economically viable strategies to support systemic and permanent reduction in land-based plastic pollution. There we go. Traditional industry-sponsored solutions have focused on end-of-pipeline infrastructures such as recycling, plugging leakage points, incineration, open-air burning, and waste-to-oil conversion. Consumer advocacy organizations push for cleanups, behavior change, and more recycling and waste management. These strategies can be helpful as components of a larger, more holistic approach, but by themselves do not address the root causes of the problem. They are not capable of supporting the explosive rates of plastics production and consumption or the market dynamics of oil so cheap that recycled material actually costs more than virgin plastic. We believe that the problem can be transformed rather than simply mitigated through investment in upstream strategies and solutions. Downstream or end-of-pipeline investment is not commensurate to a continually growing problem. Huge amounts of waste will continue to be produced with no real answers on how to manage it. Investing upstream instead will bring larger economic rewards and will change the downstream impacts. Once people's livelihoods become dependent upon the success of alternatives to traditional plastics, then that becomes the economic driver to real and systemic change. Our primary activities fall within 3 core programs. 2 focus on identifying and developing innovation, while the 3rd is an opportunity to implement some of these strategies and business opportunities. The Innovation Challenge is a global search for innovation and entrepreneurship with focus on economics, material innovation, product and packaging design, and creative communications. The New Plastics Economy Innovation Center is a program designed to help qualified startups advance from idea to commercialization. Participants get training and coaching on topics such as business modeling, customer discovery, product development, strategies for going to market, financial planning, and identifying and managing strategic partnerships. And finally, the Mesoamerican Reef Project provides an opportunity for successful startups having gone through the Innovation Center program to launch and test the impact of their solutions in real communities. We are particularly looking for startups who can demonstrate clear triple bottom line impacts. That is positive impact on people, profits, and the planet. So here are a few examples of innovations we have accelerated in our first 5 years. Specifically, the Coraball in the upper right is a device for use in washing machines. It catches synthetic microfibers shed from your clothing that would otherwise be carried out with the wastewater. 3D printing filament in the bottom middle is an opportunity to transform existing plastic waste, specifically in the form of PET water, soda, and juice bottles, into higher value material. Agricultural sheeting on the middle right that can be tilled back into the soil, providing additional nutrient content rather than traditional plastic sheeting that has high toxicity and must be landfilled. And various plant fiber bottles, which are in the very middle here, are still in the research and development phase, but they will provide a plastic-free alternative for the bottling of individually portioned beverages. Once a startup graduates from our Innovation Accelerator program, the challenge of launching their business in the real world still remains. We help in this process by facilitating connections between entrepreneurs and potential funders and advising startups on where and how to set up shop. We also have a regional pilot project in place to provide an opportunity to qualified startups to launch in communities strongly affected by the impacts of plastic pollution along the Mesoamerican Reef. So why, you might ask, did we choose the Mesoamerican Reef as a project location? The answer is that the plastic pollution problem is especially visible in small island communities with limited municipal waste infrastructure and scarce economic resources. These regions are remote, susceptible to natural disasters, and highly dependent upon tourism. Communities of the Mesoamerican Reef face all of these challenges while also being home to one of the world's most iconic ecosystems. The Mesoamerican Reef is the largest barrier reef in the Western Hemisphere, spanning more than 1,000 kilometers along the coasts of Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras. It is arguably the healthiest coral reef remaining in the world today, and is also home to seagrass beds, mangrove forests, and highly productive coastal wetlands. Over 2 million people depend upon these coastal environments for their food, water, and livelihoods. So the project was launched on the Bay Islands of Honduras in December 2015. Apart from the challenges that I just mentioned, these communities were also a logical place to start due to the simple fact that they are, in fact, islands. It is intrinsically easier to control what goes onto an island and what comes off of an island than it is for a mainland site. We plan to expand by replicating the pilot project in Cozumel, Mexico later this year, 2018, and then eventually spreading down through Belize and Guatemala. The goal is for the project to reach island and coastal communities across the entire length of the Mesoamerican reef and to provide a replicable and scalable model for success in other geographies. So here we take a closer look at the 3 Bay Islands, Roatan, Utila, and Guanaja, which are all located about 20 miles north of mainland Honduras. Characteristics shared among the Bay Islands and other island communities along the Mesoamerican reef have shaped the project's approach and development. These include an economy based heavily around tourism, unique and charismatic ecosystems that are increasingly threatened and subject to degradation. Marine plastic pollution is a huge and until very recently unacknowledged problem in this area. The products available on the islands are much more limited than here in the US or in Europe, so people who want to use alternatives to disposable plastics don't really have any other choice. Economic conditions are very poor, yet the municipal governments are remarkably enlightened and involved in trying to bring about positive change when it comes to plastic pollution. Largely, this could be because they fear pollution will detract from tourism. Quite a few local and global NGOs, as well as local activists, are very involved in sustainability initiatives and efforts to economically and environmentally better these communities. And finally, an impressive entrepreneurial spirit exists among the local population. People have ideas and want to do good by them, but they need help turning their ideas into real action, and that's where we come in. So we figured a good starting place would be to identify the hotspots of plastic pollution on these islands. By hotspots, we mean particular sites, businesses, or activities where market failure is the greatest, the need is most urgent, the pressure to act is the greatest, and currently no solutions are in place. Certain questions help in identifying these hotspots. Questions like, where is the plastic pollution generated? How much is it? What type is it? Why is it not stopped? Can it be stopped? What are the market and economic drivers? Who has a vested interest in disrupting or maintaining the status quo? And what industries or businesses are impacted? This criteria pointed to plastic straws, bags, plates, beverage bottles, cups, and takeout containers being the primary hotspots of plastic pollution on the Bay Islands. We performed an initial assessment in June 2016 and a follow-up assessment this last August in 2017. The numbers shown here are from the second assessment. Combined across the 3 islands, over 41.5 million units of single-use plastics are consumed per year, and just over 10 million units of paper products are used per year. The next question is how to go about significantly reducing the number of plastics used and reducing the number of disposables overall used. Before we tackle that, I want to take a quick step back and give you a rundown on each of the 3 islands, however. Different political situations, relationships, geographical logistics, and other factors suggest a tailoring of different approaches to each island. Roatan is the largest of the 3 Bay Islands at 32 square miles with 50,000 permanent residents. 2 distinct municipalities exist on the island. Tourism has overtaken commercial fishing as the top industry on Roatan due to large influxes of cruise ship passengers, a large second home market, and epic scuba diving opportunities. Over 1.2 million tourists visit annually. The island is easily accessible via air. It has an international airport with daily direct flights from such major US cities as Houston and Miami, and cruise ship lines. 2 large cruise ship ports are located on the island. Due to the short-term nature of visits and demand for single-use disposable items, the tourism industry generates a large amount of plastic pollution. The image here shows the main municipal dump site on Roatan. Families live literally on the dump and attempt to make their living by scavenging for items that can be sold to recyclers, which is what the young boy here is doing. Regular open-air burns are done to reduce the amount of waste piling up. Why does he keep doing this? At one point, there was a liner sealing the dump site off from soil and groundwater, but that has been penetrated and compromised. The amount of trash being generated has exceeded the area officially designated as landfill. Utila is the smallest of the islands in terms of geographic size and population. The main island is only 6.5 miles long by 4.5 miles wide and is home to just 5,000 permanent residents. In many ways, Utila is the most eco-conscious of the islands. Tourists are primarily divers who get to experience firsthand the beauty of the reef. The direct relationship between land waste production and its accumulation and effects on the reef is most clear to those who visit both environments. Significant water shortage and quality problems exist on Utila. City wells are already brackish due to continuous need and use. Projections are that the island will run out of a freshwater supply by or before 2025. One small community built on a key nearby the main island of Utila receives fresh drinking and cooking water once a week, delivered from the main island. No sewage collection and treatment or system for waste collection exists on that key. La Campagnata, the neighborhood pictured here, is literally built on a swamp. Every few years, they need to add another layer of cement to the roads because everything is slowly sinking. Again, no sewage system is in place. Everything is dumped back into the highly polluted swamp water, which is in direct exchange with the ocean. PVC water pipes carrying the clean water are visible below the surface of the standing swamp water and have obvious gaps and breaks. Guanaja is intermediate in size to Roatan and Utila. It is home to 13,000 permanent residents, and fishing and shrimping remain the primary income sources. The island's tourism industry is relatively small. A small airstrip exists, and flights from mainland Honduras come in and out several times per week. All other inter- and intra-island travel is done via boat. Frequent and affordable transportation presents a challenge when it comes to bringing supplies on and off the island or growing the tourism industry. Guanaja is, however, working hard to become the world's first green island. Strategies for becoming a plastic-free island within 2 years, conserving terrestrial and marine environments, and educating the population about climate change are all in place. On all 3 islands, Think Beyond Plastic's Mesoamerican Reef Project follows a 3-pronged approach for success. Our core competency is not education and outreach, but we recognize how important this is to building a foundation of understanding and support in these local communities. Without this foundation, it is nearly impossible to work toward policy implementation or business development. We have targeted school children, community groups, local businesses, and tourists with education and outreach initiatives, and have been successful in raising awareness and enthusiasm for bringing about positive change. Business development and policy initiatives are slower to come about than education and outreach campaigns. The project is at an exciting point now, though, where we're really starting to push ahead with introducing new business opportunities to the islands, working with local entrepreneurs, and discussing policy changes with the municipal leaders. As I mentioned, our initial efforts have focused on education and outreach. Our approach has been to build partnerships with the existing NGOs so as to enhance and support their programs. We have added and facilitated a program in which local volunteers are trained to give presentations on environmental education with a focus on plastic pollution. Volunteers are taught leadership and public speaking skills in addition to information on plastic pollution. Volunteers are encouraged to participate by completing training and signing a contract under which they receive $100 for the completion of 10 documented presentations. This program has been highly successful on the island of Utila, where 760 people were reached between June 3rd and August 10th of last year by these presentations. There is a notable lack of educational material on the Mesoamerican reef ecosystems and the impact of plastic pollution, particularly for children and particularly in Spanish. We sponsored the translation of a children's book called Pesky Plastic in summer 2017 and distributed over 300 copies to schools and NGOs on the island. Workshops in which children are taught to make art out of waste plastic are also very popular. Regular beach cleanups are organized by dive shops and some of the NGOs, and some of these groups collect data on the quantities and types of waste collected, which is useful for tracking primary sources of plastic pollution and change over time. Volunteers from dive shops are also eager to help with the construction of recycling stations. Business development can both decrease plastic pollution and boost the local economy by creating higher skilled, non-seasonal jobs. Ecotourism is becoming an increasingly popular concept on the islands, and locals take pride in promoting the Bay Islands as a sustainable destination. To build upon this interest, training is available to current business owners on best practices to reduce waste and responsibly manage resources. Some sort of recognition system, such as TripAdvisor's Green Leaders program, will be used to acknowledge and track progress. To help cultivate the spirit of entrepreneurship among island residents, we've offered small business development workshops in person and via Skype. We provide one-on-one mentoring services to local entrepreneurs and connect them with experts around the world. A specific business opportunity we've identified and are working to bring to the islands is a distributorship for alternative products. The distributorship will provide paper and bio-benign alternatives to conventional single-use plastics, such as cups, plates, takeout containers, straws, bags, etc., to all 3 islands. Alternatives will then be available to businesses at prices competitive to what they are currently paying for plastics. Alternatives to plastic bottles for water and sodas will be slower to come, but we are excited to be working with a team from the Berkeley Haas Business School this spring to identify and produce business plans and market assessments for viable options. A significant challenge exists in addressing consumer perceptions as well as the logistics and economics on this topic, however. Both locals and tourists worry about water quality and safety. Water that comes in individually sealed bottles is considered to be safe, while reusable jugs may contain lesser quality water or not be properly sanitized. Ensuring the water quality will be equally as important as identifying packaging alternatives. Developing business alternatives that repurpose existing waste are also underway. It is important to make the distinction here between clean versus dirty waste plastic. Dirty plastic is plastic that has been subject to natural conditions like sunlight, seawater, physical abrasion that decrease its quality to the point that it's essentially worthless. This would be the plastic debris collected on the beaches or pulled out of the ocean. Clean plastic is plastic that has not been degraded and can be recycled and repurposed to a higher value material. Opportunities for clean plastic include using it to make arts and tourist items or as the feedstock for 3D printing filament, which could either be exported or used on the islands to produce souvenirs, spare parts, and potentially prosthetic limbs. The only use for dirty plastic at this point is to shred it and to use it as a binder in cement for paving projects and construction materials. Other innovative technologies exist for using waste plastic in construction. In the photo on the right here, men are building a wall out of plastic bottles encased in cement. Other businesses have developed ways to compress plastic into building blocks that are much like oversized Legos. So to better understand the need for higher paying, more skilled jobs and plastic alternatives in these communities, let's consider what waste pickers are currently getting paid. So what do you think would be the going rate for 1 pound of plastic? So like if you were to go out and collect plastic bottles. That's a very good guess. And how many plastic bottles do you think make up 1 pound? 25, okay. So the guess of 20 cents is right on. Waste pickers are currently getting paid 4.5 lempira, which is the equivalent to 19 cents from the recyclers for 1 pound of plastic bottles. Between 30 and 50 bottles, depending on the size and heaviness of the material, make up 1 pound. And just because a waste picker collects these bottles doesn't necessarily mean the recycler will take and pay for the material, as supply far outnumbers demand. So waste that is collected currently all goes directly to the dump. Collection of trash is not organized in many places, let alone collection of recyclables. Waste pickers work independently to sort through material at the dump, looking for anything of value to sell to the recyclers. Open-air incineration is the only option for reducing the sheer quantity of trash, and the toxins released from burning have horrible health and environmental impacts. Whether waste collection continues to be managed by the municipalities or privatized, policy needs to be enacted that supports solid waste separation, recycling infrastructure, and composting of organics. Specific product bans, such as bans on plastic bags and straws or styrofoam takeout containers, are important to catalyzing change, but their success requires a reliable and affordable supply of alternative products to those that are being banned. A lot of voluntary action is already being taken on the islands, such as businesses encouraging customers to skip the straw or providing incentives to bring your own container. Some sort of municipal action will likely be required before significant changes in beverage bottling can happen, and creativity is definitely needed to increase the economic incentives for waste plastic. Selling directly to the recycler brings very low market prices, such that it is actually cheaper to buy new material. One example of success, however, is the plastic bag ban on Guanaja. A 76% decrease in plastic bag usage occurred from June 2016 to August 2017 due to implementation of a plastic bag ban on this island. The ban was highly effective due to enactment of specific legislation, consistent enforcement, support from the business community, and provision of reusable bags to all families on the island prior to the ban's starting date. The ban was announced 1 year before its implementation, and the public had 2 months to adapt, where no fee was applied. This resulted in strong support from retailers and citizens for the initiative. For all of these objectives, we have found that forming strong relationships and partnerships with local organizations has been critical. And this process has been more challenging and taken a lot longer than we might have originally expected. Quite a few local and regional NGOs already have strong environmental education programs, so our approach has been to help them in the work they are doing already by providing support and resources and to encourage the addition of material on plastic pollution. Working closely with the municipalities of each island is critical to bringing about changes in policy. We are partnering with a group of regional NGOs to develop proposals for policy action and recommendations for waste management. The gap that we aim to fill is related to the business development. A small business development center currently exists on Roatan and provides limited resources and training to locals looking to start or expand a business. But there is currently little capacity to help with business ideas beyond those that are traditional to the islands. So where do we go from here? I've described the environment within which we're working on these islands, the approach we're taking and continuing to develop, and mentioned some of our successes to date. Here are some of the next steps for the project and where we plan to concentrate our efforts in the coming year. One of the main activities will be a plastic schools campaign on the island of Utila, building an education and outreach program on Roatan, similar to what we've already developed on Utila. A business competition, developing business plans and market assessments for the distributorship as well as the construction materials business, plastic bag bans on all 3 islands, styrofoam bans on all 3 islands, identifying alternatives to plastic bottled beverages, and policy support for waste separation and composting. Now that you've heard about the problem of plastic pollution and its associated impacts in the Bay Islands of Honduras, I hope you are feeling some degree of sadness and concern for the people experiencing these hardships and the unique ecosystems challenged by our consumption and waste patterns. But you may be wondering whether this directly applies to you here in California, a state leading the U.S. in terms of environmental policy action, waste management strategies, and consumer engagement and advocacy. The U.S. has robust and effective waste management systems, particularly in comparison to communities like those in the Bay Islands, but we still have a pollution problem. Although the U.S. only has 5% of the world's population, it uses 30% of the world's resources and generates 30% of the world's waste. Because our per-person waste generation is so high, even the relatively small amount of litter added by each individual contributes in a significant way. Let's consider some California specifics. San Francisco Bay has higher concentrations of microplastics than other urban water bodies studied to date in the US, including the Great Lakes and Chesapeake Bay. Up to 2 million microplastics per square kilometer occur in its surface waters, much of it synthetic microfibers from clothing and other textiles. 8 wastewater treatment plants on the bay discharge an estimated 7 million microplastic particles per day. Likewise, in San Diego, dangerous levels of microplastics have been found in waters off of Sunset Cliffs, at levels similar to those here in San Francisco Bay. Concentrations of 10 microplastic particles per liter of water can harm marine organisms, including fish. The problem is not contained within a few bays, however. 25% of fish and shellfish for sale in markets sampled across California contained plastic debris in their digestive tracts. Debris studies here in Monterey Bay have found on average 38 debris items per 100-meter transect, and plastic debris was actually more common at depths greater than 2,000 feet. Cleanup volunteers collected more than 13,000 plastic straws from LA County beaches last year. Even more shocking are the numbers 500 million, which is the number of straws used in the US per year, and 1,752, which is the number of straws used by the average American family each year. On a brighter note, California was the first US state to ban single-use plastic bags in November 2016, and the city of Carmel approved a ban on plastic straws in October 2017. The city of Santa Cruz initiated discussions late in 2017 proposing to expand the city's ban on single-use plastics to include straws, drinking lids, and cutlery. The plan also includes a provision to provide an incentive of 25 cents to those patrons who bring their own reusable food containers to local restaurants, and a fine of 25 cents to those who do not. I'm sure you are all familiar with the mantra reduce, reuse, recycle, and perhaps the increasingly popular version that adds refuse to the list. Suggestions for moving beyond these towards a zero waste lifestyle include rehome, replant, and rot, or compost. Decisions you personally can make in your everyday living to help reduce plastic waste include reusing reusable products made from recycled materials with minimal packaging, choosing natural over synthetic fibers when you have a choice, avoiding personal care products containing microbeads, and keeping trash off of streets and beaches and out of water. Consumer advocacy campaigns such as No Straw November, The Last Plastic Straw, Choose to Refuse, and Ban the Foam have gained a lot of traction through social media. A nationwide consumer campaign called In Our Hands was launched last year by 19 aquariums across the United States, including our own Monterey Bay Aquarium. All 19 partners are shifting away from single-use plastics in their own operations. They have committed to significantly reduce or eliminate plastic beverage bottles by December 2020 and to showcasing innovative alternatives to single-use plastics in their facilities. Policy action has proven to be successful when supported by education and availability of alternatives. We encourage you to be active in your local and regional communities. A couple examples of success to date include observations from Los Angeles and Alameda counties. In 2011, LA County was disposing of 45,000 tons of single-use plastic bags each year. Its large stores were giving away 2 million plastic bags and 196,000 paper bags annually before its ban. A year later, those same stores handed out only 125,000 paper bags. Alameda County passed an ordinance in 2013 very similar to the current state law, and an 80% reduction in the number of bags used, both plastic and paper, has since been measured. Think Beyond Plastic has a truly global reach, but we are also committed to supporting the Monterey Bay region. Last October, as pictured on the left-hand side here, at the Our Ocean Conference in Malta, our CEO, Daniela Russo, announced plans to launch the SAMFAR Innovation Center here at CSUMB. The Innovation Center will provide a physical space to host innovators, entrepreneurs, scientists, engineers, and businesses working on multidisciplinary approaches to solving the plastic pollution problem. We also involve local students in our work on both the Mesoamerican Reef Project and other programs. We have built a fellowship program with Middlebury Institute for International Studies here in Monterey, such that at any given time, 2 to 3 students work closely with us to advance project objectives. We will also be working with a team from UC Berkeley this spring. We are committed to bringing new opportunities to the region, as well as providing opportunities for local people to become involved in initiatives with global reach. I'd like to leave you with this diagram comparing the amounts of time it takes for various products we use in our daily lives to decompose in the natural environment as compared to the average human life expectancy. Run through some of the numbers. I ask you to please pause and consider this as you go through your daily life and make decisions about the products you use and in what quantities. It may feel like you have no choice or other option at times, but more often than not, you do, and you can help make a difference.